Good morning, everybody. My name is Jennifer Martel. I go by she, her pronouns, and I'm the Sustainability Manager at the University of the Fraser Valley and an instructor with the Planning, Geography, and Environmental Studies Department.
And hi, everybody. My name is Chelsea Klassen, and I am the lead researcher at the Community Health and Social Innovation Hub, and I also teach in the Global Development Studies program.
Wonderful. We'll go to the next slide. And if you haven't had the chance to be here when we started, I'm Karima Cherifi, and I'm the Sustainability Coordinator at the University of the Fraser Valley. Everybody, if you have any questions throughout this presentation, please leave it in the chat. We'll have a few questions for you, so we want this to be an interactive session. We'll present our pollinator garden and explain to you the relationships, the different partnerships that we have throughout the creation of this pollinator garden. So we'll go to the next slide. So we'll start with a territory acknowledgement. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that we are here in Abbotsford, where I'm speaking to you on the traditional unceded territory of the Stolo people. The Stolo people are known as the people of the river. They have stewarded this land and protected it for generations, guided by principles of reciprocity and respect for all living things. And today, as we explore the University of the Fraser Valley Pollinator Garden, I invite you to reflect on how Indigenous ecological knowledge can shape our approach to sustainability, because at its core, sustainability is about relationship with the land, with each other, and with species. And that's very important too. It's not just an anthropocentric view where the human is at the center. There's really this relationship with the natural world as well. So Jen, you can take over and tell us more about Abbotsford.
Great, thank you, Karima. I was waiting for the slides to come up. So as Karima mentioned, we're located in a city in Canada called Abbotsford. It's in the province of British Columbia. So we're on the western side of Canada, and we're about 70 kilometers inland from Vancouver. The region, or the Indigenous name of the area, is called Stalo Tumuk, Stalo being the people of the river and the people nearby. And Abbotsford is part of that territory and part of that region. It's actually right next to the US border. So that snow-capped mountain, which is actually a volcano, and it's in the US, it's called Mount Baker. It's about an hour drive south from us, but the border is basically within 5 to 10 minute drive of us at all times. So very close. And on the north side of our city, we're bordered by what's called the Fraser River, and it's a very important river to the area for many, many reasons. Our city has about 150,000 people, just over that now, and it's actually the largest geographical municipality within our province. It has 389 square kilometers, and about 72% of that land is located within what's called the Agricultural Land Reserve. And that just means that the area is protected for agriculture. So it can't be used for industry, it can't be used for domestic developments, except having a certain size farmhouse on different farms, that sort of thing. So we're primarily an agricultural hub. Now in this picture, so we're also in a beautiful valley. And in this picture, it's being taken from the mountains on one side of the north, and it's looking south. The green area you see, the farmlands, that actually 100 years ago was a lake called Semath Hotza in Halkomelem. Semath is the closest nation to us territory-wise. Hotza means lake. And this lake was an incredibly important resource to the Indigenous people, and it was drained without their consent by settlers. It's just coming up on 100 years now since that happened. And it was detrimental to the Semath and the Stolo people and their way of life. And it was drained to allow settlers to have farmland, and very cheap farmland at that. So the only reason that we're able to actually have an agricultural hub here is primarily due to colonization and the destruction of an important natural resource and really critical wetland to the area. And it's important to acknowledge that in the work that we do. Next slide, please, Chelsea. So as I mentioned, we are an agricultural hub. It's actually one of the most intensely and diversely farmed areas across all of Canada, and it supports a wide range of crop as well as livestock production. Agriculture is one of the main economic pillars of our city, and in many ways, it actually defines Abbotsford within the region. People know it as a farming area. And our top three crops that we grow are hay and other kind of fodder crops, fruits, berries, nuts, as well as corn. And we're also the berry capital of Canada. So this image is showing in the wintertime some of our blueberry bushes that have gone, they've lost all of their leaves, and there's still this beautiful red color. So we have a lot of blueberries, raspberries, strawberries. And it's important to mention this and this that we're an agricultural hub because without pollinators, our area can't survive. The agriculture can't survive. And so we rely a lot on the not just the insects, but different animals in the area to help with the pollination of our crops. Next slide, please, Chelsea. However, in 2021, we experienced a lot of devastation in our area. So first in the summer, we had what were called heat domes. We had 2 back-to-back heat domes. And as a result of these extended extreme heat incidences, it was over several weeks, we lost millions of pollinators in the area. Lots of bees, of course, flies, butterflies, hoverflies, as well as a lot of birds, bats, and rodents and that sort of thing. And unfortunately, less than 5 months later, we also had historic flooding in the region. And a bit of what you can see on these images is Samathotsa or Sumas Lake returning as a result of these floods. We had back-to-back astronomical rivers that came through the area. And in addition to that, there's a river just south of us in the US, and sorry, not astronomical river, atmospheric river. It's a little bit early in the morning for us still. And through this atmospheric river, the banks of the Nootka River breached, and the water came rushing in very quickly. So not only did we lose millions of more pollinators less than 5 months after the heat domes, we also lost a lot of animals and a lot of crops. And it was quite devastating to the agriculture in the area. I'm going to pass it over to Chelsea to talk a little bit more about the effects of this.
So as I mentioned, I work at a research center called the Community Health and Social Innovation Hub. And one of the really cool parts of our work is that we get to work with local community groups. We work with municipalities, we work with nonprofit organizations to do research into really important issues that they're trying to tackle. So we were asked by a community group called Archway, which provides support in a number of different ways for the community in Abbotsford, to look at some of the effects of the flooding event in Abbotsford. And of course, as Jen mentioned, not only were there environmental effects from this, we can call it a flood, but really it is the lake returning. There's not only the environmental impacts, but there's also the social impacts. And on the one hand, Abbotsford was well positioned to address a natural disaster of this scope, because Abbotsford actually in Canada is the most charitable city. So per capita, our giving is the highest. So that really was helpful in terms of getting people immediate needs, getting them met as the event happened. On the other hand, what that does allow is it allows our municipal governments and our provincial governments, who are, for the province of British Columbia, that's kind of one of our ways we organize our government. It alleviates some of the responsibility off them. But it was really amazing to hear people talk about how socially sustainable in many ways the response was able to be because of the strong community approach to supporting one another. So that was encouraging, but it was very obviously challenging to hear people share their stories of the devastation. And after we finished that report, we were actually asked by the Indigenous group that Jen mentioned, the Sumath, to look at what their experience as a community was with the flooding event, as well as looking at what resilience means for that community. Some of you may have heard of the residential school system in Canada, which took Indigenous children from their families and made them go to Western style schools. That has led to generational trauma and led to many issues for Indigenous people in Canada. And so hearing about their experiences of how they have grown so resilient from previous experiences they've had as a community, but also acknowledging that there are many ways that they need to strengthen their community was really part of the research we heard. We also heard that the mining and the deforestation that is happening in Abbotsford and in our community is really threatening their way of life. They're noticing the movement of animals is much different than it used to be. They're noticing there's not the same supplies of fish and other wildlife. So those were a few of the things that we heard. Both these reports are available, so I can also share the links in the chat at some point where you can get in touch at the end. But the one of the most interesting things we heard too from the Sumac people was, as Jen mentioned, because of the lake was there for, you know, so time in memoriam, as the Indigenous community kind of talks about, the lake had been there for so long that the Sumac First Nation, when the flooding event happened, many of their dwellings and their homes were not actually that severely impacted because they built up into the mountain. So there's mountains surrounding that area, and they built their dwellings up into the mountain. So already they were, showing how well they had stewarded their relationship with the land. And so the importance of continually stewarding the land is something that we take quite seriously at UFE, and Jen and her team at the Office of Sustainability are doing that in such an amazing way with the pollinator garden, which I think we're going to pivot to talking about now.
Thank you for sharing all of that, Chelsea. So yeah, we decided that we obviously wanted to do something to help the area after the floods and the heat domes. And so at UFE, we had the opportunity to build a pollinator garden. And part of this actually came because of the devastation. There was a particular plant in the region that after the heat domes was decimated across the entire area. And initially it was thought to be because of the extreme heat, but actually it turned out to be a disease, and the plants were more susceptible to the being affected by the disease because of the heat dome. So they were killed by the heat domes in a way, but because of this disease. And so there was a large plot in one of the gardens behind our student housing that became available. It was about 100 meters by 3 meters. And so we worked with the grounds team and the facilities team to put forward a proposal to do a native pollinator garden. So all of the species that we would plant there are native species to the area. Species that are local pollinators actually have evolved to be able to work with and to live in, and they needed better habitats, and they needed more nectar and pollen and a good balance of it. And it's kind of tucked behind our student housing, and so it's not very visible and very public, but the intention was initially to rebuild some of those lost habitats and to support the pollinators in the area. And so the picture on the bottom left is from our first planting day when we're just putting in our little seedlings, and the top left is the following spring, at the very beginning of the season. So already it was growing quite big. The pink roses are actually a native rose species called the Nootka rose, and those were already there, and they had survived the heat dome. So they have a bit of a barrier. And on the far right, you can also see we have an herb garden, and students and staff alike are welcome to go and pick whatever herbs that they'd like. And we very quickly saw an increase in pollinators in the area. So we also, this garden is mostly volunteer and staff led. And so we have different volunteer days. We get people on campus involved with helping with taking care of it. You can see the blue camas flowers in the middle have a cute little bumblebee on it. So we saw a huge increase, not just in bees, but other pollinators, moths, butterflies, and even snakes. So the snake there her name is Susie. She's our resident snake in our garden. She's a garter snake. They're not dangerous. And we actually have a second snake now whose name is Sally, short for Salazar. And so it's become this really nice little community and ecosystem. It is very tucked away though, and it also is tucked up against, you can see in the picture on the bottom left again, right up against the residence building and right up against people's homes essentially. And so we will run tours in the area at times, and we will run these volunteer days, and we always warn the residents just so that if they prefer to close their blinds or their shutters, they may do so they don't feel so that their privacy is being compromised. but that also means we can't really encourage people to go back there and to connect with nature and to learn more about the garden unless we're running a tour of the area. And so we applied for some funding to be able to expand our pollinator garden. And initially, we actually pushed for it to be across from the existing pollinator garden, across this grassy patch, which you can kind of see in the top right picture. There was a row of cedar hedges that had died and needed to be replaced anyways. And so initially we applied for some funding to kind of twin the garden, so it was on either side. However, that area actually has a pretty harsh slope at points, and so we would need to build an accessible pathway in order to allow more people to come to it. And unfortunately, the funding that we had at the time didn't allow for that type of an expense. And so we had to pivot because we really wanted to make the space somewhere that people could go, anybody, no matter their mobility options, that they could go and experience the garden and learn about pollinators and pollinator gardens, and as well as just reconnect with nature. So instead, we worked with facilities and with grounds and operations, and we found a new location that was much more accessible, and you'll see it on the next slide. So this is our new pollinator garden. It's still growing. It just started last year. And so it was this kind of barren patch of grass. The soil was completely depleted of all nutrients that were needed. So we had to dig all of that out, get some new healthy, fresh soil in. We have some plants growing now. They're dormant right now because it's winter. And we've also worked with some other partnerships that Karima will speak more to have a gazebo so that people can join and enjoy the area, rain, shine, or as you can see, snow. We finally got snow for the first time this winter the other day, just in time. We got the gazebo up last week. So it's a little bit whiter right now, but we're hoping within the next kind of month and a half, we'll see a lot more green coming back. And so this is our new pollinator garden that has only been able to come to be because of partnerships.
Thank you, Jen. So next slide. Perfect. So throughout this presentation, you'll see a few questions pop here and there on our slides. And this is the first question. So we want to know, have you noticed a decline in pollinators in your area? So you can just write in the chat if you have. We're very fortunate here at the University of the Fraser Valley to have a very talented team, passionate people. And we had an amazing intern, and her name is Cam. And she's an expert in Canva. We call her sometimes Canva. That's how good she was with the tool Canva. And she created this beautiful representation of the pollinator's garden vision. So you can see we have a gazebo at the center. We have trees, spillers, fillers, thrillers, which I'll explain in a few minutes. We have rock swells. And the area is really central. We're located next to the yurt and the labyrinth. So as you can see, you can walk around it. It's very accessible. And there's also benches around so you can enjoy the view and really just come there to spend time with your friends, study, or just relax in a beautiful space. But every element on this image was designed with collaboration and partnership in mind. So when you look at the rock swells, we had to consider who are the experts at UFV in grounds, who is the expert in plants, who's the expert in irrigation, maintenance, etc. So during this planning phase, we thought about each of these elements to shape every single step. So we can go to the next slide. So I'm going to start first with the selection of the plants, because as you saw on the previous slide, that was the selection of the space and the vision. And the next step was to prep the soil and select the plants. And I think there's a beautiful story here to tell with the plants, because we often talk about the partnerships we have with individuals, but we do also have these beautiful partnerships with plants, birds, and pollinators. And I think it's important to honor that partnership. So in our pollinator garden, we showcase over 30 different plants of species, and they're all native to the Fraser Valley region. So They have been chosen, yes, because they're beautiful and attractive, but also because of their ability to bloom at different periods of the year. So under each of these images, you can see the bloom time, and we really try to select so they don't overlap too much. There's really this continuous supply of nectar and pollen and shelter for our pollinators across multiple seasons. So the thrillers are the tall and bold plants that are usually the focal point, the ones that your eyes will see first. We even have the red Aussie dogwood, which is a beautiful a red plant. So right now it's winter time and we could still see it. So that's a beautiful little accent, little detail. And the first one here, we have the Saskatoon berry, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, because this plant can help us understand really that relationship that we have with the natural world. So I'll go to the next slide. Up next, we have fillers. So fillers are those medium sized. They're usually, they add mass and texture to the garden. And for example, the showy milkweed is a critical plant for monarch butterflies. So we had this in mind where, yes, we want color, yes, we want texture, but we also want to bring all these pollinators back, and Jen beautifully explained the reasons behind. And also important to note is that pollinators need a variety of shapes and colors and sizes, because all of them are attracted by different things. So we really had that in mind, and we actually collaborated with our wonderful grounds teams, but also with biology teachers and the Indigenous Center at the University of the Fraser Valley. So we'll go to the next slide. So we started from the top, what your eyes sees first, and then the texture, and now we're going on the ground with the spillers. So one thing I have to mention, the garden is located in a space where it experiences direct sun, and we had to keep in mind that we need to bring in plants that are heat, light tolerant. So when we selected them, we had that in mind. So spillers are the ones that create movement. They're around our rock swells, they're on the edges, and not only we have beautiful plants that are visually attractive, but we also have edible plants. We have little strawberries. We also have some that attract little mammals, and some of them use wind to pollinate. Others will use, let's say, mammals that play a role in seed dispersal, or some of them will have bees or butterflies. We really have a variety, and in total, the total number of plant is 284. So we can go to the next slide. And 284, that includes two beautiful Pacific grab apple tree that will be at the center. So if you remember, we had the central point, which was the gazebo, and then next to it we'll have two beautiful Pacific crab apple trees. And we have Chelsea here that can talk to us about their partnership that we'll have together in March. Chelsea and her team will help us actually plant these beautiful trees. So if you want to add a little something, Chelsea, you can.
Sure. So our team recently, we had to refresh one of our meeting rooms. It was, very, very dated, very dirty. It needed a refresh. So, we got new flooring and new paint, and we thought, we want to try to do something. And I know it's not an equal displacement by any stretch, but we thought we want to do something that kind of can contribute positively to sustainability on campus and something that will have a lasting impact on campus. And so we met with our research team. We have about 15 to 20 people working at our research center, students, staff, and we talked about, how does this option feel if we can do plant a tree, we can volunteer and help out with the planting. And so that's how we decided to make that connection. So we're looking forward to, yes, I think we have been talking about this for a while, and I think it just was time finding out the timing, but we're really looking forward to putting it into the ground in March, Karima. So thanks for that
It's
opportunity.
happening.
It's
Thanks. So
exciting.
we'll go to the next slide. And it's important to mention that all this happened with the help of UFV. So UFV celebrated 50 years from Fraser Valley College to the University of the Fraser Valley in 2024. So we're really grateful for all the funds that we received from UFV 50, TD Friends of the Environment, and also our department, the operation department that gave us funds. And at the bottom here, you can see this beautiful representation of all our plants that bloom at different stages of the year. And we really wanted to have all these colors. So if I don't know if you can tell, but there's a symmetry here. So on one side, you'll see green, on the other side, you'll see it as well. So it's we thought about all these little elements, and all these plants, they can't just be put in the ground on their own. So we'll go to the next slide to show you how we did it during planting day. So in September, we had Chelsea's class, but we also had a lot of other students help us make this happen and plant all these beautiful plants. But before we continue, I would like to ask you another question. How do you think we can create a space on campus that can restore biodiversity, but also engage the community? So if you can take a moment and write down in the chat, how do you think we can create that? So how we did it was with the pollinator garden, and we'll go to the next slide. And through the power of partnerships. So nature thrives on diversity, but also successful sustainability projects do as well. So diversity is, you can see it with the different partners that we have. So one of the external partners that we had is the Fraser Valley Conservancy. So how we did it during planting day, we had a few students work on a section of the pollinator garden, and the other students went around campus with the Fraser Valley Conservancy, and they learned about the different species of the area that were already on campus, because we have an indigenous garden and also plants around campus, and we would rotate like this. We also had students from the Global Development Study class, Chelsea, who helped during planting day, but also there was a little activity where we wanted them to give us ideas on what kind of seating do you want to see around the pollinator garden, but inside the gazebo as well, and what kind of signage would you like to see. So we really got the students involved at every stage of the process. We also had biology and the grounds department guide certain walks as well at different moments. The Center for Accessibility Services was the one who helped us really understand accessibility for people that on a wheelchair, for example. How do we create a space so that the gazebo, but also the surroundings, respect people with different abilities? So you can see on the picture here that we have people planting, people gathering and learning about the plants, but we also have the creation of this gazebo at the center. And we had our wonderful colleague Patrick from Trades, another campus in Chilliwack, who brought in his students and they built this gazebo. So they learned how to build this thing in school, but instead of building and destroying at the end of their semester, we decided why not collaborate and have the students build, and actually what they build stay there for a long period of time. So that's really something that they can come back to school and say, I've worked on this and I participated in this. So each partner brought something unique, either with their knowledge or their resources. So it's really like an ecosystem. This is how we thought about the pollinator garden, just like an ecosystem where plants have a role, but also every single individual played a role. So we'll go to the next slide. And I want to talk about a plant that I mentioned earlier. The Saskatoon berry is a plant that we have in the pollinator garden. And when we talk about partnership, I really want to put a lot of emphasis on the power of plants, the lessons that we can learn from plants. And I'm just going to read a quick few lines here in a book. So we'll go to the next slide. So yes, so the Saskatoon berry is a small but mighty berry. It has nourished for years indigenous communities for centuries, and it offers sustenance and also this lesson in reciprocity. So the author, Robin Wall-Kimmerer, that also wrote Braiding Sweetgrass, wrote this beautiful book called The Service Berry. And the service berry is, so the local native service berry, the scientific name is Amelanchier arborea, have small, hard fruit, which tend towards dryness, and only once in a while, there's a tree with sweet offering. So the bounty in my bucket today is a Western species known as Saskatoon. So you'll notice the service berry also is known as Saskatoon, Juneberry, Shadbush, Shadblow, Sugar Plum, Sarvis, and Serviceberry, among many other names for the Amelanchier. So ethnobotanists know that the more name a plant has, the greater cultural importance. The tree is beloved for its fruit, for its medicinal use, and for the early froth of flowers that whiten woodland edges at the first hint of spring. The serviceberry is known as a calendar plant, so faithful it is to seasonal weather pattern. So it's wonderful to see that a plant has, well, so many different names, but also this ability to just really connect with the season and really be in touch with climate and how it evolves. And so Robin, the plant scientist, is a member of the citizen Potawatomi Nation, pardon me. It's the people of the place and fire, and she's the author of many great books like Braiding Sweetgrass, but also another one named Gathering Moss. So she describes this beautiful concept. What if our economy worked more like a forest, really like an ecosystem? So instead of extracting, what if we build this system of mutual generosity? And I find it fits really well because Chelsea mentioned that Abbotsford is one of the most generous cities, and we saw it when we had floods. But also the plants that we selected depict this generosity, this abundance, and these plants don't just hold on their fruit. They don't just hoard on their fruit. They feed the birds, they feed the insects, they feed the humans, and in return, these species, these other species like the birds, the butterflies, they spread their seeds, and we really have these endless generations of service berries or of plants. So it's really this beautiful relationship, this beautiful reciprocity, abundance, and gratitude. She names it the gift economy. So we can go to the next slide. So this pollinator garden that we have is really a representation of this generosity and not accumulating. So our garden embodies the same philosophy, where it gives to pollinator by providing a shelter and food. It gives to students by serving as a learning space. It gives to the community by strengthening our connection to the land. And so it's not about taking less, it's really about giving more. So in a way that we can regenerate the ecosystem, but also our relationship with each other and the natural world. So throughout this session, I invite you to think, and you can talk about it in the chat, or just reflect on your own, take a moment and think, how can we create systems in our own work that mimic the generosity and resilience of nature? So we'll go to the next slide. And one of the most exciting aspects of this project for me was applying principles of biomimicry, which I just spoke about. This aspect of reciprocity and generosity has been in nature for billions of years. So nature has been solving these complex problems. Why wouldn't we learn from it? So biomimicry is really that practice of looking into nature for design solution. And I really like these images that I have in the background here, where you see the interior of our gazebo really looks like the image on the right. So there's this beautiful interconnection here. And another way that we use biomimicry is just this concept of pollinators foraging pattern, meaning that we ensure that plants bloom in a succession across the season, so that there's this beautiful dance throughout the year. Also, another way we mimic nature is that we place the gazebo at the center. So it's really a central hub, like many natural ecosystems where they're around this key resource. Another way we did it was with this diversity of plants. So we have over 284 plants that mimic this healthy ecosystem, and this ensures this resilience against climate shifts. So efficiency, resilience, and interdependence. So we'll go to the next slide and talk about, yes, we just spoke about the environment and how we can look into nature to find solutions and really respect this dynamic, this gift economy that we have with each other and the natural world. But there's also, in sustainability, it's very important, the aspect of people. And when you design a space, being inclusive and thinking of not only your abilities, but other people's abilities is important. So during the process of creating our pollinator garden, we thought about accessible seatings and pathway, just to ensure that everybody can enjoy the space. And we also have educational signage that share knowledge about indigenous plant and pollinator species, but also we have plaques that showcase who is it that worked on this, who built this gazebo, who sponsored this tree, etc. And it's really a space that fosters mental well-being, because it offers a central space where they can reconnect with nature. So I want to ask you another question in the chat, if you have a chance to reflect on this. How can we make public green spaces more inclusive for our community? So I just gave you a few examples of how we did it. And if you do have other ideas, we would love to read and learn more about it. So we'll go to the next slide. Thank you, Chelsea. So you might all recognize these 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And our pollinator garden is more than just a green space. It directly supports the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Even our university signed the SDG Accords. And really, we are aligning all our projects with the SDGs and just the strategies and even in our curriculum. So let's just talk about a few key ones that we touched by building this pollinator garden. So SDG 15, life on land, definitely. This project restored native biodiversity, and it provided a critical habitat for pollinators, birds, and other wildlife. We also planted local indigenous species of plants. So we really made sure that these were not resource intensive species. They really already adapted to that environment. Another SDG is SDG 13, climate action. So just by having this resilient ecosystem on campus, it's already something that it aligns with climate action. SDG 11, sustainable cities and community, quality education. SDG 4, good health and well-being, really that aspect of improving mental health, reducing stress, and fostering community. And it's a beautiful space for students to just relax and learn about nature. And I would pick up the SDG 17 for last, but I think it's probably the one that links everything together. And I should have probably mentioned it first, but it's SDG 17, partnership for the goals. And in this project, everything was possible through collaboration across disciplines, bringing students, faculty, indigenous partners, community organizations, the partnership with the plants, the birds, the elements. All this cross-sector partnership really amplified our impact and can have long-lasting change. So that's that was one of my favorite SDGs. So we'll go to the next slide. And you can see right now, our pollinator garden is covered with snow. And what's next for us with this pollinator garden? So many beautiful things. And just to name a few, we talked about the trees. We'll collaborate with Chelsea and her team to plant 2 beautiful large crabapple trees at the center of this image. You can see there's a little space left for those trees. We'll also think about implementing rainwater catchment system. And like I said previously, every time we think of an element, we think, who can we partner with? So we already know that there is someone we can collaborate with at another campus, or maybe within our campus. And it just made me think of this element of circularity. Everything we could reuse, we did. So for example, the tiles at the bottom of the gazebo, they were left on another campus for, I would say, over 5 years. They were just hanging out at this other campus, and we decided to take them and reuse them and put them at the bottom. So place those tiles at the center of our gazebo. Same thing for rainwater catchment system. We are already looking, okay, what is it that we can reuse to really create this circular economy? And also for our roof and seating, we're collaborating with the different departments. And there's also another step that we're gonna take on in the next few weeks. It's the signage for the pollinator garden, inspired by our indigenous teaching garden. So there's so many little things that we are working on. It's a beautiful project. It took a lot of collaboration and time and partnership, and it was just really, I'm really grateful that I had the chance to participate in this great work. So we'll go to the next slide. Well, there it is. I want you, maybe Chelsea, if you can see if there's anything in the chat for us. We can even go to the next slide and allow everybody to see how they can get in touch with us. And we just want to say thank you today for spending the time to learn about how we did it. And I hope this session will inspire you to look around your campus, or maybe even around your home, or your room, even your balcony, in any way that you can connect with nature and have this gift economy, this reciprocity and abundance shape in your environment. So thank you. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Karima, for that. It was so wonderful to learn more in depth about the pollinator garden, even though I've been at the outside of it, hearing about it. So that was wonderful. And I think for the participants who are here, just to let them know, like, the work that your Office of Sustainability is doing is really vital to the well-being of the university. So we're so grateful for that. And it's so wonderful to be able to collaborate, right? Like you said, it takes time to nurture and foster those collaborations, but at the end of the day, when you're working together towards that, you really see the beautiful thing that's able to be created. So thank you so much for bringing this gift to our campus.
Thank you, Chelsea, for participating. And all your wonderful students too.
Yeah, they really enjoyed putting the plant, like doing the planting. I really caught them off guard, to be fair, but they were most of them were very excited to come and join the planting. They were pleasantly surprised. Alicia
Wonderful.
said, amazing to see the transformation of the space. It will have so many benefits to the campus.
Thank you, Alicia. And we did leave in the chat links to the presentation slides, and we can also leave our emails, and if you want to get in touch, please do.
Awesome.
Great. So we'll wrap this up. Thank you, everyone, for spending time here with us today. If you have any question, now is the time. If you want to share one of your moments of reciprocity, or this concept of gift economy, how it appeared in your life, in your environment, this is the moment for you to share your story. Thank you. All right, so great. So I see everybody in the chat is. Thank you, Matilda.
And I just put the links to the flood reports in case anyone's interested in reading on those further. You can take a look there and be in touch.
Perfect. So from anywhere you are in the world, thank you and have a great rest of your day or evening. Thank you so much, Chelsea, for being here today and organizing this with the University of Bergen.
Karima. Thanks everybody for joining.